It's time to learn our kettlebell clean. Now remember, our press, our squat, and a lot of those movements that are required to go overhead are only as good as our kettlebell clean. So the big problems we find with our clean is that people just let that bell slap into position, or they simply don't know how to make the movement efficient and smooth to optimise for the rest of their other movements that come off the back of the clean. So it's a really cool exercise to master because it then delivers on so many other movements you can do with kettlebells. Let's review the setup tips to get you in the right position and go through a couple of key fundamental principles of the kettlebell clean. Now the setup is exactly the same as our single arm swing. Let's take a look. We're a foot length back from the bell, and that kettlebell is on the instep of the side we're going to start on. And then from here, we're simply hinging down, hands on the bell, set shoulders, shift the weight back to your heels, and that's our start position. Before we go to the clean though, it's all about the pop, pull, and punch. Let's go through a couple of reps so you can see what that looks like. So you notice we're no longer using that extended arm, but we're doing what's called taming the arc, meaning we're controlling with our elbow movement to get that bell nice and close to the body. By taming the arc and controlling it, we're not going to have that bell bash into the top of our wrist. It'll be a nice, smooth movement. So that's the pull. The pop is our hip pop. We pull and then we punch through as quick as we can. By trying to punch through fast, we will then let that bell smoothly come into that rack position. Let's have a look at this rack position now. Our rack position has our bell firmly against our wrist, but it's not pulling our hand away like so. So we're pulling against the bell and we have that upper arm in contact with our chest. This is the position we need to make it to. We can punch through open-handed to help us get into that position of the hand where the bell is coming across the hand and sitting in there nice and comfortably. Let's have a look at a couple of open hand cleans to help us get into that rack position. So you can see by punching through an open hand, you're going to get that nice natural seat of the bell in the rack position. All right, so we've covered our setup tips and we've covered through the pop, pull and punch. Let's go through some dead cleans now that's going to allow you to refine your nice smooth transition into that rack and really emphasize on the pull and the punch. Let's have a look at a dead clean and then a cool little drill you can do to help give you some feedback to get you in the right position. So you can see on our dead clean, we start over the top of the bell, kind of like our deadlift. We're then going to pick that bell up and set our shoulder, and then from that loaded position in our hinge, we come up close to the body with the pull and the punch, using the pop to drive the movement. The key points here is setting the shoulders and pulling from a set position. We're loaded through our posterior chain, and we can drive into that pull and the punch. We then lower to the floor and we reset. Shoulders are set. Pulling into position. Now what happens if you're really struggling with the pop, pull and the punch and you can't get that bell close enough to you and the bell's slapping into your wrist and causing you a bit of discomfort? Let's use a bit of feedback like using a wall or a rack where you're close enough, or if you hit that rack, you know you're not in a correct pull position to get into that nice clean. So we simply stand in front of a rack where we can still hinge down and we're not going to obviously headbutt the wall or the rack, whatever we're using. We set shoulders, sharp breath. By adding that block in front of you, that's going to make you emphasise on the pull to keep the bell close to the body, which will allow you to punch through for that nice, clean kettlebell clean. We've worked a lot on how to get that bell up into a nice rack position. The other key element is the lower and being able to keep that bell close enough to the body, just like our swing, and letting it fall far enough to allow our hips to catch the movement, to either place the bell down or re-clean into the rack position. We can do a drill like top-down cleans to help us practice that fall and re-clean, or that fall and place down. Let's take a look. So we need to be in this top position. So you can see by practicing from the top down, you can really focus on letting that bell fall close to the body to allow your hips to catch it, and drive up to the top or place the kettlebell down. So if you're really struggling with letting that bell fall long enough, the emphasis is letting it fall long enough for that upper arm to come in contact with the body, then that rush back into the hinge, and then either reclean with that pop and punch or placing on the floor. It's time to put it all together. Now we're going to go through a couple of different full cleans with the double kettlebells and putting together everything we've just learned. But we're going to kick off with a little tip if we're struggling with our clean that might be a bit counterintuitive to what you're thinking. Now, you'd be surprised to know that going heavier on your cleans can often tidy up your technique and make it more efficient. Reason being is because we're taming that arc and keeping it close to the more feedback we have, the better our positional awareness. So if we've been working on something like a 20 kilo kettlebell and we feel like we're still slapping into position and it's still bashing our forearm, why don't we jump up a bell size? So let's go on the 24 now, and then you can drill the bell size up to help tidy up your clean by using a bit more weight to provide more feedback. So as you can see, that was a nice tidy little arc, and I could really emphasise on the pull, and then I had to drive through hard with the punch. Don't be afraid to bump up another bell size if you feel like you're manhandling or monstering the bell you have in order to tidy up your clean. Now let's have a look at our double kettlebell setup. Reason being why I love double kettlebell cleans is because if you have an uneven side, or if you're a bit stronger on one side, you've got a dominant side, you can use a double clean to help let that dominant side lead the weaker side to improve the pattern. Then it also delivers you into double kettlebell squats and presses. So it's a really good, useful drill to do to add more load with kettlebells, which we should all be aiming for. So we've got double kettlebells here. We're going to face them in on a V. So a V towards each other. We're still going to be that foot length back from the bell. We're going to hip hinge, hands on, set shoulders and shift the weight to our heels. That doesn't change. So from here, we can use those two bells to drive that pull and the punch to help make the weaker side or the less efficient side mirror that dominant side, which is going to help improve our efficiency. And once we're there, once we're in that rack position, we can go for our squats and presses, and we've got a lot more exercises at our disposal because we can pick up two bells comfortably. Let's have a look at a couple of reps. So, that's your double kettlebell clean. We're going to need a little bit of a wider stance than normal just to make sure those bells clean between our legs, but then we can really use both sides to practice that efficient pop pull punch to get in the right position. Now, the rack position and the differences between a squat and a press. Now we want to hold the bells in different positions depending on the movements we're doing in order to make sure we're efficient after the clean. If we look at our squat, our position for our rack is actually going to be slightly tipped in with the bells resting on our upper and lower arm. This allows us to pull into the movement without the bells trying to do this. With our press, however, we want to be in that vertical forearm position. Let's look at a couple of cleans and then squats and presses to show you the difference between the finish positions. Don't worry too much, however. If you clean and then you simply need to go to a vertical or slightly tipped in forearm position, you can do that once you've finished your clean. But it's really important to know the start points for each movement so you're not wasting any energy once you're there. And there you have it. Your rack position, squats, presses, knowing where your start position is going to save you a lot of energy and time when you're going from cleans to squats and presses.